Welcome to the Blue Stage Podcast, the podcast where Northeast Ohio theater takes center stage. Brought to you by the Blue Macaroon Theater Company, located in Doylestown, Ohio. Blue Macaroon Theater is an intimate, black box-style performance art space where stories come alive just a few feet away and every voice matters. Blue Macaroon Theater also offers theater, voice, and music lessons. For more information, tickets, and a full list of upcoming events, go to bluemacaroontheater.com. Hi guys, I'm your host Tyler Ferrebee, and on today's episode, we're lucky enough to talk to a couple of my good friends, Steve Parsons and Zac Rusk, who are both working on the completely original show Elijah, the Prophet of Fire, at the Ohio Star Theater. Welcome, guys. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us.
Of course, dudes. So, first of all, I'd like to get to know you guys a little more, or at least let the public know you a little more. So let's start with Steve. Why don't you tell us about your career and how you got to this point with Ohio Star?
Well, it's a long story that I'll compress super crazily here. Basically, always been a musician. That's what I went to school for, primarily a composer, orchestrator, all of those things. But most of Northeastern Ohio also knows me as a music director, conductor, primarily at the Players Guild, Carousel Dinner Theater when they were around. Been on staff at Weathervane for a couple of productions there. Obviously, Blue Macaroon this past year. Lots of other theaters, Magical Theater Company. So essentially, I have been kind of that music guy around here for a long time. And because I'm a composer, and I also had ties to Tammy McKenzie, who's the now the artistic director at Ohio Star, she had asked me if I'd be willing to come in and music direct my Christmas Carol that has been performed about every place it seems anymore. But she had actually asked me to come in just for that, and then we had talked about doing original work, and then we kind of developed this whole idea of doing original shows for Ohio Star. So that led into what is now going to be our third show for 2027. So we're keeping it going. We'll see how it goes, but that's kind of how I got hooked into that whole scene down there.
Awesome. Yeah, I've worked with Steve for years. He's an amazing accompanist, pianist, music director. Anyone who's worked with him is very happy to have him around, so I'm sure it's no different down there. Zac, how about you?
Not too dissimilar a background from Steve's. I got into singing and vocal music when I was in high school, and decided that's what I wanted to go to school for. My degree is in vocal performance, study of opera, and after that, I ended up working at outdoor theater company Trumpet in the Land for several years. I took on the role of music director there, and then just kind of took that as an opportunity to get really acclimated to working with vocal ensembles, and that led to a lot of opportunities at Trumpet in the Land itself and at, importantly, Little Theater of Tuscarawas County. I was music directing a production of a show, Emma, a pop musical in early 2025, where I met Joseph Sheridan, the young man who's the stage manager at Ohio Star Theater. And he invited me to audition for Road to Damascus, their production last year. So I did that. They brought me on to be in the ensemble as well as act as the voice captain for the production, a role that I still serve as to this day. And it ended up being a good fit. I was able to lead. I got the opportunity to lead a lot of rehearsals down there, prepare the ensemble for Road to Damascus, a role that I similarly performed in Prophet of Fire. And of course, I perform on stage from them as well. I played Naboth in Elijah. And I was also their music director for the 2025 production of A Christmas Carol. So I'm looking forward to seeing where things go in the future with them.
I definitely am too. I've had the pleasure of seeing both The Road to Damascus and Elijah, and they're solid great pieces of theater. The tech's amazing. You guys have animals walking around. It's crazy down there. So Ohio Star's located at the Dutch Valley campus. It's more than just a theater down there, correct, Zach?
Oh, most certainly. There's lots of things to do. There's, of course, the Dutch Valley restaurant, which most people in the area originally know the campus for. Actually, that's actually how the whole campus got started, was just Dutch Valley restaurant, and it gradually expanded into a whole lot of different offerings. There's the Carlisle Inn, of course. There's Dutch Valley, the Dutch Valley gift shop. And then I believe most recently the Ohio Star Theater itself. So there's lots of things to do just in that little chunk of land down there.
And you got to go into Sugar Creek to experience all the things, you know.
Oh, of course.
Ohio's little Switzerland, what do they call it?
Yeah. We have the world's largest cuckoo clock, correct, down there? I'm pretty sure that's a thing.
That is right.
So, Steve, why don't you tell us a little bit about the creative process when writing either Road to Damascus or Elijah?
Well, one of the things that I always insist on, because a lot of composers, you know, you want to get started writing music, of course, whenever you're on a project. Like you're like, sometimes you're dreading it, don't get me wrong, because you're like, oh, blank page syndrome. I have to fill this page somehow.
Sure.
But usually you're like, oh, I want to get started. You know, I want to figure out what this show is. But I always insist that we have to have an outline, because with theater, no matter what you write, it has to be about the character and particularly the story, and making sure that everything you write is in service of that story, you know, whatever the project entails. So for like Road to Damascus, before I ever, I was like, we need to outline this thing within an inch of its life. And then we kind of sat down and figured out some things. And then I took that and then went home and said, okay, what kind of musical language makes the most sense for this kind of a show? You have these opposing forces of like, you know, Saul and his whole mission initially to try to persecute these people and get them in line with his beliefs. And then you have the apostles who have just gone through the whole, you know, Pentecost experience. So they're all about like this new, fresh energy. So I was like, you know, I can kind of counterbalance almost kind of like a very traditional musical theater kind of like, you know, staid, very like formalized kind of style along, and then counterbalance that with a little more almost like a pop theater sensibility for the apostles. So that was kind of like the first thing that I was like, okay, I think I figured out what this show needs to be. So, but again, you're doing that in service of character and story. So you're like, okay, what is this character? What is his psychology? Where does he live? All of that sort of thing. And then with Elijah, it was very similar. The nice thing about Elijah is that even as it's depicted biblically, it's a very clear story. Like there's a clear beginning, there's a clear, you know, ending. There's a clear antagonist. You know, you've got Jezebel, who's a great villain. I actually had to watch that we didn't write too many great songs for her because then she could kind of take over Elijah's own story. It happens. But, you know, ultimately you have to decide, okay, what is this show? And then for Elijah, I was like, well, this show, it's, you know, big epic things, you know, fire from heaven. There's a huge rainstorm. There are all these like rituals where they're sacrificing to Baal and all these other things. So you have to kind of counterbalance all that. Plus then there's this mountain imagery. So it's like, well, how does that work? And so you figure out like each of these characters and where they live. And for that show, I took more of the approach of this is going to be a big sweeping epic. So it's a lot more of like more epic musical theater, it's traditional in the sense that what you would think of as like more contemporary traditional, if that makes sense. It's not musical comedy, clearly.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's more like, you know, more, you know, again, I'm saying comparatively, like, you know, Titanic and things like that, where you have these big, almost like symphonic feeling scores. So I really like leaned into that and didn't go anywhere near the pop realm because I felt like that story didn't need to go there. And then as we're working on our new project, kind of a similar thing where we wanted it to feel cinematic. So I kind of went for a little more of a cinematic vibe and a different kind of rhythmic feel. So again, I'm looking at character, I'm looking at story, I'm looking at all those things, then writing the music. And that's, in order to write a piece of musical theater, you have to do it that way. You can't just start writing songs and then hope that they kind of fit into the story. Anytime a show stops to listen to a song, you've stopped it dead in its tracks. So everything has to be telling you something about some element of what's happening. So anyway, again, that's a compressed version of how that works. So that's kind of what I think when it comes to that. And it seems to work pretty well. I mean, you can only learn by doing, particularly with that. So you can find what works and then find a process that allows you to get a lot, and I mean this, a lot of material out very quickly.
Sure. I just find it fascinating how writers and composers, people like yourself, are able to imagine aesthetics or like motifs that fit a certain motive or character arc. It's very fascinating.
Well, because anybody can, I mean, not really, but like anybody who is any kind of songwriter can typically write, you're writing about 10 to sometimes like 17, even more songs. I'm not counting musical numbers, just literally like songs. Anybody can write a collection of songs, but you have to, it has to come from a project, and it also has to all work dramatically. You have to be very cognizant of, I've just had 3 songs in a row for this particular character. The audience is probably going to get bored. Or that's a great moment for a song, but we did not write the song for it yet. Like we've tried several times, and we still need to keep working. So, it's a kind of a learn by doing, and you kind of feel it out. You see what people's reactions are to it in the early stages, and then as you go through, even like preview, we cut Dirty Secret, not really, but we cut 10 minutes out of Elijah after it had already opened in previews.
Oh, wow.
Just because we were having some concerns about some runtime. There were some concerns about some material not being needed. So we just kind of went and saw how things were playing with an audience, and then went, this stuff needs to go. So now it's about 10 minutes leaner. And, that happens. You just find what works and what doesn't as you see how an audience responds. So it's definitely very collaborative. Unlike a lot of other composition where you're, in your studio, in your office, whatever, and you're writing music on your own, this you have to be very cognizant of physical production, of actor ranges as far as vocally, actor fatigue. That was something where we went all out with La Road to Damascus, and then it's like, maybe we shouldn't have everybody sing full bore for 2 hours plus. Maybe we could balance that. So you just find things out, and as you go through the process of doing it.
Sure. And speaking of collaboration, why don't we give a shout out and learn a little bit about the other members of your creative team?
Oh, yeah. Wait, I don't do it myself? What are you talking about? No, our other, first of all, I've already mentioned Tammy McKenzie. She's great. She directs the shows. She is kind of the overall spearhead of the whole thing creatively. Then we also have, in terms of our writing process, there are a billion people that go into theater, that go into producing theater, but in terms of the direct writing process, we have Ellie Zumbach, who is actually, I'd worked with her when she was a student, and she's a poet, she's a writer of prose. And then we kind of dragged her into doing this because she really loves theater and had written some stuff with me back in the day. So she writes both lyrics, but then also helps to craft the book. As they say in theater terms, the book is the libretto, the spoken lines. And then Joseph Sheridan, already mentioned by Zach, he actually also co-writes the libretto, and is very instrumental in shaping things like story structure, the overall arc of the show, really like tweaking dialogue, all that kind of thing. And they're the ones who predominantly, like, obviously I work with directly, and we have some brilliant people like our costume department, Chad, who's our technical director. All these people are just instrumental in putting together the show. I mean, we could go through, for the next hour and sit here and list everyone who's listed in the program, but in terms of like the direct shaping of the show initially, they're probably our team, as it were.
Sure.
And of course, and people like Zac, who I'm gonna do a plug right here. He's brilliant. He does a great job of making my music sound good with the the actors. So
I can vouch for that. I can vouch for that. Everything sounds great down there. Well, the only way to put on a show with such a great creative team is to also have a great set of professional actors to work with. Zac, I have gotten to see a little bit of your cast's work through their shows and through the magnificent marketing structure that you guys have set up for Ohio Star. I think it's really cool getting to see like the backstage stuff and like getting to see set design and see you guys record the albums and stuff. That's really fun. Why don't you tell me about the process of working for a professional theater company in Sugar Creek, Ohio, and tell me about your cast. They're from all around the world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess literally. I'll start with the cast. Yeah, no, quite literally. We have I'll just get the obvious one out of the way. We have a young lady, our dance captain, Katie, who is from Australia, who inevitably comes up when we talk about how far and wide everyone is from. But no, we do have people from all over the country. We have a young lady who I think is from the young lady who plays Jezebel is from Brazil. I don't think she lives there currently, but I believe she was born there. But we have a lot of people from New York, of course. That's a big professional actor hub. Couple people from Kentucky. We've had a couple guys from Tennessee, from all over the country, really. And then of course local people from Ohio, like me, and Logan, the fellow who plays Elijah. But as far as the process goes, it's a lot of work compressed into 6 weeks. Like 6 weeks could seem like a lot of time to put up a show, but it's a lot of detail work. So the expectation, and I believe this is or at least should be the case of any professional company, is that you come in off book. You come in with your material learned, your music learned, like ready to hit the ground running and rock and roll. So we'll do a table read, and then we just start putting things on their feet almost right away. And within that first week, we're getting to runs kind of as quickly as we can. And the benefit of this is that lets us focus on the little details that I think set a professional level show apart from, a community production or, something like that. Things like fluid scene transitions, things like making sure there aren't traffic jams on stage and making sure that's something that could consistently happen time after time. Lots of little things that aren't left up to chance. Really making sure everybody can get their track down cold before we start putting this out in front of people. And things like refining the music to make it, take it from just, we're here, singing some notes on a page, to really making the material come alive and be interesting to listen to. Because, one thing I always try to tell the actors is, anybody, and this isn't necessarily true with, a brand new work, but if people just want to listen to pretty songs, they could just stay at home. They don't have to buy a ticket. It's easier to listen to on Spotify. But they come to see a show because they want to see people engaged. They want to see something come alive. And but I do think having that time to get that kind of work done and to help bring that to life really makes a better experience for the audience overall, and something that they wouldn't be able to get just by staying at home. And great speaking of editing, I feel like all of that great detail work kind of comes together like great editing in film or sound or what have you. If it's done really well, people won't even know that anything has been done. It's just going to seem like a fluid, seamless, cohesive experience. But to be sure, they're very long days, very focused days. It's not all smooth sailing. Our rehearsal days are usually from 10 to 6, 5 days a week during the rehearsal process. So, it's a lot of effort put in, but I like to think that the final product is worth it. So,
sure. And after your rehearsal process, what's the show process look like?
The show process is, it feels, I don't mean this in a bad way,
sure,
but it feels very much like a day in the office. Which is to say, you come in, we do warm-ups, we make sure everything's set up for the show. Everybody has a very different way of getting ready for the show. That can mean lots of different things to lots of people. There are some guys who I know like to listen to custom-made playlists to get in the mindset of their character. There's some people who just need quiet time. I'm one of those people. And just make sure that everything's in position for where it needs to be. Then there's the show itself, which the more you do it, the more kind of muscle memory it becomes in a way, which is to say, not to say that you're checked out, but, you don't think about, every tiny little thing you do. You just kind of trust that your body knows what to do because it's done it so many times. You've had, 6 weeks of runs, 6 weeks of rehearsal to get that side of it figured out. And, you could just really focus on engaging with your castmates and making something unique every time, in spite of that, aforementioned muscle memory. And then once the show is done, you just get out of costume, turn laundry in for the day, and it's as simple as that. Sometimes we'll do 2 shows in a day, which that is probably the most challenging aspect of the show process, I would say, because Elijah especially is a very physically demanding show. Pretty much nobody has any real sense of downtime. So we get a couple of hours to recharge, get some dinner, grab a shower, do whatever you need to do. And you come back at 5 and the whole thing starts up again.
Sure. Of course, we're going to plug the schedule at the end of this, but what does your schedule look like? Like, how many days a week are you doing this?
We do, depending, I could say confidently we have 5 working days a week. Whether or not those are 1 show or 2 show days can vary depending on what the schedule is. But believe me when I say there are plenty of opportunities to come see Prophet of Fire. There are usually at least 5 shows in a week. Do it.
See it, people. Prophet of Fire, Elijah, Ohio Star Theater, located in Sugar Creek, Ohio. Well, I'd definitely like to ask both of you your favorite scene and favorite song from the show. Let's start with Steve.
Ooh. Always tricky to ask the composer that question.
I know.
Oof. Yeah. I would say, if we're gonna break it down into those 2 components, probably my favorite song in the show is Hidden Embers, because of the way that the song lands in the story and the way that it affects the characters, and a way that again, you don't write it with this in mind other than you hope that it works. The way that the audience seems to respond to it, it's just one of those moments where you're like, oh, wow. Like in a big epic score of high notes at the end of most of the songs, it's a very intimate, it builds and then it dies away again into the sense of hope. It's basically kind of a prayer. And it was great to write it, first of all, but it was also great to see how people responded to the number. As far as scene, I really like it's the Mount Horeb scene. It's basically where Elijah, it's our second of 2 mountain scenes, by the way. It's where Elijah essentially goes up and it comes face to face with God. he sees all these great, wonderful feats of God and all these, glorious sights and what have you. And then when God actually speaks to him again, it's in this very small voice. And then it's about him like kind of finding, after all of this of doubt and wondering if he was going to really hear God's voice again, being able to triumphantly kind of go forward and say, yes, this is what it is. This is, I am here for a reason. This is why I'm doing this. And it's one of those moments, like as far as character development, that you can't help but be like, yeah, that was really kind of cool. Not to mention the fact that they've got all kinds of cool lighting effects. So,
the tech is so cool in that scene.
Yeah, it really, I mean, and there's, like I said, it's hard for me to choose, but if my knee-jerk reaction would probably be those two things.
Great picks, I'd say. Now, how about you, Zach?
So I'm going to answer in kind of reverse order, because I want to complete the Mountain duology, with my favorite scene with, Mount Carmel, which is, happens at the end of Act 1. It is the climactic scene that the marketing alludes to, the sort of showdown between Elijah and Jezebel that ends the drought and shows the miracle of God sending fire down to the earth to accept his offering and denying the existence of Baal. Dramatically, it's a scene that the tension starts and it just keeps going up and up and up and up, and it does not stop until intermission. And it feels like intermission comes because it has to. Because even with the resolution, it is just, everything is at a fever pitch. It's been staged in such a way that you could really feel Lindsay, the choreographer, has given the Baal priestesses some really sort of chilling movement to depict the Baal worship, which is really almost creepy to look at in certain ways. The fight choreographer Brad has given a really, really intense fight sequence to end the Mount Carmel action with. That's a great way to cap that off, and it just feels like things build so much. It's incredible to act through. I can only imagine it's just as interesting to watch. So.
Can't argue with that choice. Let me put it that
way. Musically I want to say it's a tough bag, but it really isn't. My favorite song in the show is definitely "In His Time." It's the message of the song, I think, is the one that I most directly connect with. It's a song very much accepting that things happen in God's time and that you should celebrate everything that happens, regardless, good or bad. You should. It's a gift just to be able to get to live life no matter what the circumstances are. Which is a great message that from that show that I just personally really resonate with. And musically, it has some beautiful, beautiful vocal harmonies. You don't hear many songs that have, two men just kind of, broing out in a positive way, singing some great harmonies with each other that isn't some kind of like, oh, we're evil bad guys scheming, or we're two baritones like about to argue against one another or something like that. And it ends with it ends with my favorite musical moment in the show, when the mantle of prophet is passed from Elijah to Elisha. It's this beautiful progression from the angel chorus that really demonstrates the passing of the torch, and it's impossible for me to describe how good it is. It's just something you're going to have to come and see, but man, it is the most powerful piece of vocal music, one of the most powerful pieces of vocal music I've ever been able to work with, and they do such a great job with it.
I can't say that I'm surprised you're saying that about something that Steve's written. that's all I have to say.
Me neither.
I try. It's a process.
Well, I think you guys have done a fantastic job at letting the audience know what the show's all about and really getting people excited for it. So I'm going to focus back on you two individually for a second. I like to ask this of everyone that I talk to. I'll start with Steve. What are some of your biggest artistic influences? They don't have to be theater related, but they can be.
Well, I would say, like, just as far as like some categories, dramatically, I would definitely say. I mean, of course, you have to always like Sondheim is a big influence because he's a big influence on most of contemporary musical theater, or theater in general. I mean, you have to kind of pay respect there. Definitely, in terms of like musically in the theater realm, Stephen Flaherty is a. I mean, I love his work because it's very accessible, but it's also very tightly constructed. You know, I'm thinking of course, of things like Ragtime, Once on This Island, all of their material. He and Lynn Ahrens. And the nice thing is, I was years ago. I reached out to both of them, and they were very helpful in looking at some of my work and giving me some good, just direct involvement as far as saying, "Hey, this is really cool. This doesn't work as well." Bill Brown, who was the late Bill Brown, who orchestrated Ragtime, Man of No Importance, Miss Saigon, Mary Poppins, these huge shows, and he was great. Same thing. He really went with me and listened to my stuff. Really, just like sat there and went step by step through all of my work. Also, a friend of mine, Doug Katsaris, who really early in my career was a great cheerleader for me, and really I got to work side by side with him and see how the whole thing works. He's written jingles. He's been the music director for numerous Broadway shows, orchestrator for Broadway and off Broadway. Has written some great music. I worked with him on his own work, so huge influence. And then I would say, like, as far as a composer, John Williams. I mean, I always you see my Music by John Williams shirts that I wear. Definitely one of my earliest influences musically, as far as beyond the classics. Stravinsky, Beethoven, because you use a lot of Beethoven-like techniques in writing musical theater. A lot of the taking a couple of notes and turning it into a score, that kind of approach. And just in terms of artistically, from a strictly just a writing, things that I really love, I would have to say, I mean, these days, people talk about Lin-Manuel Miranda, who obviously is hugely influential in contemporary musical theater. You can't help but take a look at his stuff. But even for somebody like me who came up before that, looking at William Finn, his stuff, looking at Marcia Norman's plays, she was absolutely. She made her mark as a Pulitzer Prize winning dramatist before she even wrote anything musical like The Secret Garden. And people like that, you're just these are some great artistic influences. Yeah, and obviously, from a film standpoint, Spielberg was part of my childhood, so I can't help but say, Spielberg. Just that's kind of a hodgepodge of different people who I feel artistically have influenced me in different ways, part of the showmanship of Spielberg, the construction of some of the others. It's just, it all kind of has shaped who I think I am, at least as a self-analysis anyway.
Knowing you personally, that answer couldn't have made more sense. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Zach, how about you?
Sure. So my answer is going to be a little bit different because I can draw a lot of my personal artistic philosophies directly back to instructors I had at my time at Baldwin Wallace University. And there are four that come immediately to mind. Two of them I kind of want to speak about in the same breath, and those are the two voice teachers that I had. The late Sophie Ginn Pastor, who I studied with for 3 years until she passed, who was a huge, I cannot overstate her influence on my career. She had a very text-driven interpretation of music. People called her the diction queen, and I'm not going to. Anybody who's been in my rehearsals is going to know that I'm never going to say that diction is not important. But it taught me that diction isn't just about clear text. It's about being understood. It's about communication, and I think that's something a lot of singers tend to miss. especially when they're young, because we're all focused on having we have to have this beautiful sound. We have to have high notes, and we have to sound really cool when we sing. So I think remembering to focus on that communication piece can be really, really important. And then Boyd Mackus, my most recent voice teacher for the last couple of years I was there, really got me interested more so in character style singing. He came from an operetta sort of Gilbert and Sullivan background, so he fueled my love of that style of music, and I think that informs some of the choices that some of the choices I make on stage, and some of the characters that I tend to gravitate toward. As well as my opera workshop teacher, Scott Skiba, who sort of piggybacking off of the work I did with Sophie Ginn, was really focused on the acting piece of acting on stage, because a lot of times, especially in the study of opera, the acting piece can get kind of diminished or brushed aside or made a little too secondary. And he just refused to compromise on that in a way that I found very, very gratifying, of different acting techniques, and exposed us to a lot of different philosophies. But, he came in one day toward the end and he said, when I was, I was in a production with a buddy of mine, and my buddy said, "Hey, I found the perfect technique. It's called whatever works." And that really stuck with me. To not get stuck inside of my own head and trying to follow some kind of template, and just being, trying to exist genuinely within a moment, within a musical context, is very freeing in a way. And lastly, looking toward the sort of vocal director piece, I always look back to Dr. Dirk Garner, who was the choir director for most of my time at BW. Almost all of my rehearsal technique comes from things that I learned from him. I took his choral conducting class. I, of course, sung in his ensembles for my entire time I was there. The things I admired most about him was his consistent standard of quality. He had a way of just setting the bar super, super high, and not necessarily in a pushy way, but just once he chose a line to a hill to die on, he would not back down, and I respected that so much. I also learned to be efficient with rehearsal time from him. In his rehearsals, there was never any downtime. If he wanted to rehearse something, it was just 3 quick repetitions, and then we would move on to the next thing. It was so refreshing to have an hour, 15-minute long choral rehearsal where you were always engaged. There was always something to do. And he had a standard where, if you're going to teach a piece of music, you should know it as intimately as possible, and you should know as many things about it as possible, which is something else that really stuck with me. It's a standard that I try to live up to whenever I take on a project, especially when I'm in a teaching role, and it can really make a big difference, I think, because having someone in charge who has an absolute understanding of what's going on, I think, can lead to a much better result and much better engagement from the cast than you would get otherwise. So, and I suppose on a more personal, accessible level, so that I can shout out somebody people might actually know, I have to attribute my whole artistic existence in general to Weird Al Yankovic. Because that's really how I first got started singing. I had no idea it was something I could do until I started singing Weird Al songs in middle school karaoke. And it was, I have to respect Weird Al because it's really hard. It's you don't see somebody who gets that famous, who is that positive and is just totally unproblematic. It's just the most benevolent human being you could possibly think of. And yeah, it's something. He's somebody that I hope to get to meet in real life someday, because I cannot overstate the impact that man unknowingly has had on my entire life. So
you're going to be that guy. Like, if you meet him, you'll be like, Weird Al, you don't even know, man.
You're Steve, you're joking, but that's not off the table.
I've been fortunate, Zach, because I hope you do get to meet him. Because I mean, I always how they sometimes say the adage is "don't meet your heroes." I feel if you have the right heroes and you don't completely turn into a disaster, it's kind of cool to be able to say I've at least connected to somebody who was that influential on me. You know, just meeting. You know, like I said, like, you know, Flaherty and Aarons, and I got to meet. I've seen John Williams 3 times in concert. I got to meet him once. Talked to him for about 5 minutes. Now, was it the most breathtaking 5 minutes of either of our lives? Probably not. But it was at least I have now connected with somebody who has been that influential in my life. So, you know, I'm never one to say, oh, you shouldn't essentially fangirl about that. It's even if it's just that glimpse, the brief window of I shook his hand or I did whatever, you know, it's just a moment to say, yeah, this was important to me. So
that's awesome. I had no idea you met John Williams. That's very cool.
Yeah.
But like I said, sometimes they say don't meet your heroes. But again, if you have the right hero, like I think, like you said, Weird Al's it seems like he's a great guy. Everyone who's worked with him says he's great. So I hope for you, Zach. I'm putting it out there to the universe.
We both do.
Oh. we both. I appreciate that.
It's crazy how someone like him can. I mean, his influence is multi-generational. I mean, I'm sure he had influence on Steve as well as he had influence on people that were younger than us. You know what I mean? So it's very cool. And I
think my awful. I was going to say, do you think my awful sense of humor came from just out of the blue?
Well, you have us laughing. I really hope that Zach's answer motivates and helps educators that listen to this understand how influential and how important they are on people that are going into their chosen workforce. And I really respect those answers, Zach. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Well, I think we are going to wrap this one up, boys. It's been great talking to you. I guess I just got to ask if you guys have anything that you want to plug.
If you happen to be free on July 12th in the Akron area, there is Tyler and I are both involved in a production of an old Sigmund Romberg operetta called The Desert Song. That will be performing in Firestone Theater on July 12th, I believe at 3 p.m. Tickets are free, but there are only about 300 left, so definitely check that out if it's something that might interest you. And keep an eye out for more information on Ohio Star Theater's 2026 production of A Christmas Carol. We'll be getting that underway here in the next few months. So that's what's on the horizon for me.
Yes, and I'm aside from other kinds of desert song, Elijah, like come see our show. Christmas Carol, of course, is up. I mean, the nice thing is, after a million years of having to music direct my own work, I get to hand it off to somebody else and just come see it and say, yay, my show. So definitely keep an eye out for that. We will be, within fairly short order, sending out some information about the 2027 season for Ohio Star. We're already feverishly at work, as I was saying, trying to write a show by Tuesday or whatever, or however much we can get done by Tuesday. We're doing a reading, so that's up next. And I'm always trying to just say, hey, if you're an educator who's looking for new music for choir, for jazz band, for concert band, full orchestra, string orchestra, basically all of the major boxes, you can find my work at a whole bunch of places. Excelsior Music has they're in a kind of their company, and then they have umbrella companies within them. A lot of publishing there. RWS Music, which is distributed by Alfred, and then Carl Fisher in New York. Basically, I just tell people, if you go to JW Pepper and type in my name, about everything that pops up is my stuff. So if you want to either listen to some new music, or if you're an educator who needs something to play with your group or sing with your group, there's a lot of stuff out there. So just hopefully people keep doing my work, because I really love, more so than just the kind of the ego trip, you might say, of like, oh, they're performing my work. It's more like I'm so privileged that people like to sing and play my stuff. So I always want people to just, hopefully be touched by it in some way. So just take a look. It's out there.
Nobody deserves the success more than you guys. Thank you for your time today. It's been awesome. Everybody go see Elijah, Prophet of Fire at the Ohio Star Theater, running now through when?
November?
Yep, November 5th.
Thank you. I was completely spacing on the date, and we will have a cast very soon. We're going into the studio to record the official cast recording, so that'll be out there in the world, hopefully by the end of August.
Exciting stuff. Listen to it, y'all. All right. This has been the Blue Stage Podcast. Tyler Ferrebee signing out.
Our sponsor for the Blue Stage Podcast is Ascent Audiology and Hearing at 390 Robinson Avenue, Suite B in Barberton, Ohio. Specializing in hearing aids and diagnostics, Ascent Audiology is committed to providing a superior experience in achieving better hearing for you. To make an appointment, give them a call at 330-776-5421.